Hi, my name is Melia, and I'm here with Rachel, and this is for the Veterans History Project. So to start it off, would you mind telling us your name and where you were born?
My name is Rachel Evans Higgins, and I was born in Traverse City, Michigan.
Okay, and who were or are your parents, and what were their occupations?
My dad was John Evans, and he was an Episcopalian minister, and my mom was Joanne Evans, and she was a high school teacher for the public schools.
Did you have any siblings?
I have 5 siblings.
Oh, wow.
I have one brother, Chad, and then 4 sisters, Megan, Kate, Mary, and DJ.
And where do you fall in that?
I'm the youngest.
Oh, you're the youngest, okay. So what were your parents or siblings' feelings about you joining the service?
I did it very suddenly, so they didn't really have any input until it was already done, and they just thought it was kind of crazy.
Okay.
They didn't understand it.
Did you attend any primary and secondary schools? And college, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah, I graduated. I went to Benzie Central, but then I graduated from Interlochen Arts Academy in 1981, and then I went to Northern Michigan University in Marquette for 2 years, and then I joined the Navy.
Did you hold any jobs before entering the service?
I worked at the Cherry Hut in Beulah for about probably 6 years, and then I worked for them also into the fall, the year I joined at the Jam Kitchen.
So did anything specifically draw you into joining the service?
I had a girlfriend who joined because she was sort of like me. We were kind of flailing and didn't really know what we wanted to do, and college was becoming more and more expensive, and I was the last of 6 kids, so there really wasn't much money left over.
Yeah.
So I just did it.
Okay. So can you tell us about when you went into the military? And were you drafted, or did you just enlist?
I just enlisted. I was out of money. I was pretty much out of money, and when I came home from college that spring to move in with my mom, this is going to make her sound like she's a terrible person, but she wasn't. She said, well, I don't know what you're doing here. You can't live here. So I just needed something to do, like a direction and somewhere to go.
So that lack of money and stuff is why you joined?
Pretty much.
Any other reasons?
I just always intrigued me that people did it, and I thought it was interesting and just a good way to get a good start on something, anything.
Right.
Anything's better than nothing.
So who did you leave behind? Was it just your family?
Just my family, pretty much, and a boyfriend.
And was it difficult for your family to watch you go?
It was more difficult. They weren't really involved in my going. I had a girlfriend take me. I stayed with a girlfriend all summer, and then in that fall, I was still living with some friends, and they took me down there. My family really didn't, they probably knew, but they didn't really show any kind of support. I think when they really hit home was when my box of clothes came back to them from boot camp.
Oh, okay. So they weren't supportive in this?
Not really. I mean, I don't really think they thought I was going to do it. And so then when they, it was reality check because when you get to boot camp, you have to send back all your personal belongings. And so when my personal belongings came back, they knew I did it.
Wow. So you entered the Navy, correct?
Right.
So why did you choose that branch?
Why did I? I don't really know. I just chose that branch. Probably because I had a friend that was in the Navy, and I don't know. I just did.
Can you tell me a little bit about your training?
Yeah. Well, I went to the basic boot camp for 8 weeks in Orlando, Florida. Was it Orlando? Yeah, Orlando, Florida. And then from there, I went to my A school, which A school is like your secondary schooling. It would be like going to plumbing school or going to electrical school or something. Mine was in mechanics, construction mechanics specifically. And that was in Gulfport, Mississippi. It was 12 weeks long. And so then after that training, my first duty station was right there in Gulfport.
So what was the best part of your training?
Of my training specifically? Yes. I loved boot camp. I thought boot camp
Really?
was really fun. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it was just, it was challenging physically and mentally, but I was probably considered to be older than most of the recruits, so I thought it was fun.
Okay, so then what was the worst part?
Putting up with all the harassment and just being the only woman in so many men. That was the worst part, by far.
The harassment?
Harassment, yeah.
Could you explain that a little bit?
Well, you can imagine. You know, I'm one woman in a battalion of 600 men. I mean, you could do nothing right and everything wrong.
So what was it like adapting to the military lifestyle?
It wasn't that hard for me. I grew up in a big family, so it wasn't a big deal in boot camp to be amongst a bunch of women sharing space, and then same thing in A school. Not hard at all, just same sort of thing. You're just in with a bunch of people living in barracks situation. Wasn't hard for me. That part was easy. And then when I got out of A school and lived out in town, it was just like going to a job.
Okay. So where did you serve, or do your?
So I first served, my first duty station in the springtime of 1984 was at Gulfport, Mississippi, and I worked for battalion support unit called R61. So we just kept the fleet moving, and battalions would come in and out, and we'd be sure that all the fleet was always ready to go. The vehicles, the cars, the trucks, everything. And then after that, I had my choice of duty stations overseas. My choices were Adak, Alaska, or Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and I went for the warm climate.
So what kind of vivid memories do you have of that experience?
Of Guantanamo Bay specifically, it's just a beautiful place to live. The weather was gorgeous, and it wasn't bad in Gulfport, Mississippi either. I mean, the weather was great compared to coming from northern Michigan. You know, every day was a sunny day. I have nothing bad to say about living in Cuba at all. I loved it in Cuba, and I actually liked it in Gulfport too.
Would you go back
I would go back.
and live there?
I would go back there and live.
Interesting. So how did the wartime experience change you?
Well, you couldn't really say I was enlisted in wartime. I mean, there's always specific things happening in and about the world, but we were never directly involved in any kind of war.
I guess I could kind of reword that. So how did your service time change you?
How did it change me?
Yes.
Exponentially. I mean, I became a better person, a stronger person, a more independent person, a confident person. I have a work ethic that, I always had a good work ethic anyway, but I have one that's very strong because of the military. You know, there's no messing around. There's no second chances. You do it and you do it right.
So would you say that it was mostly good changes?
Good changes.
Were there any bad?
I can't think of any.
Okay. So what kind of friendships did you make from serving?
I have just one very close friend that I met when I was in Gulfport, my friend Carol, and she and I are still friends to this day. She's probably my best friend coming out of there. But I did get married in the service, so I am still close with my now ex-husband. We still speak, and we still hold that in common. And we have 3 children together, so that came of it. So good friendships.
Are you still in touch with any of them, or is it just
Yeah,
Carol and-
I still talk to Carol, I still talk to Chuck, I still talk to Glenn. Facebook-wise, there's a few social media, we keep up with each other,
Right.
but we don't really speak.
Gotcha. So how did you keep in contact with your friends and family back home?
Well, it's 1984, we wrote letters. We didn't get to call much in basic training, and then in A school, I just didn't have time. But after that, it was always telephone. In Cuba, there was a phone, you know, some weird dialing thing, but we could call on Sundays. So I called home on Sundays.
So what did you do for recreation?
Well, in Gulfport, we just did a lot of exploring. I mean, there's so much to see along the coast. Hung out with friends, went to the beach, checked out casinos. Back then, casinos were only allowed on boats. In Cuba, the obvious, spent all our time at the beach and running. We ran a lot.
So can you tell me about any particular or humorous or unusual events?
Yeah. So I was in the Seabees, which is an elite group of people who keep up the construction end of things. In other words, if something gets blown up or ruined, the Seabees come in and fix it. You know, pave the roads, fix the vehicles, all that kind of thing. So I learned how to operate several pieces of machinery. So one story that I always remember is a friend of mine and I were on this crane. We were on a crane, and we were trying to bring it up a hill, and suddenly the boom let loose, and the boom went swinging down the other way, and our crane just let loose, and we were like, da, 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 da. And we thought life was over, but we made it.
Oh, goodness. So do you do anything, or did you do anything for good luck at all?
No.
No? Okay. So what would you say was the best part of your time serving?
I would say the best part of my time serving was just feeling like you belonged in something, you were part of something bigger than yourself, and just kind of being part of a group that everybody had a common interest.
So what kind of challenges did you face being a woman in the service?
What kind of challenges? Many challenges being a woman in the service. First of all, you're not taken very seriously. I don't know if it's changed since then, but wasn't taken seriously. Harassed beyond belief. Just things that men got away with then, I don't think I would hope men are not getting away with now. Mm-hmm. It helped that I was outgoing, confident, smart. Those things all helped, but it was a challenge.
Yeah. So do you feel as though you get or got the same amount of recognition as your male peers?
I got the same recognition as my male peers only because I demanded recognition. And I was very confident, and I was very smart comparatively, and I was not afraid.
So do you think your female peers would have gotten the same recognition if they didn't have all those qualities?
No. I know several female peers that just sort of, went through it. They just went through it.
So now we can kind of get into the end of service. Do you recall the day that your service ended?
I recall the day that I left Cuba, yes. But in order to get processed out, I had to go to Virginia Beach. So I do remember the day I left Cuba.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It was just sad. I was a little sad. I loved Cuba, and I would have stayed there forever. But just the unknowing of what I was going to do next.
So did you return home?
Did I return home? No, I did not return home. I stayed. I went to Virginia Beach to get processed out, and then I stayed with my husband in Gulfport for a little while, and then we moved to Connecticut and Michigan and
then you ended up back here?
Illinois.
So how were you received by your family and community coming back?
I was received well, I think. I mean, nobody... it was so long that it must have been 10 years before I came back to my hometown, so there weren't a lot of people left here, but my family was very glad I was back. My mom was here, and yeah, they were.
So would you say they were more supportive than they were when you were leaving?
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you readjust to civilian life?
It wasn't hard because I had sort of a buffer that I was still married to somebody who was in the service, so we kind of eased into it.
Okay. Did you join a veterans organization?
No.
No. Do you attend reunions?
No.
Did your attitude towards society change after your experience?
Somewhat, yes. I would say it has. I can't really pinpoint how. I'm a lot prouder, of what I did than I thought I would be now that I'm older than I was when I was younger, but I didn't really ever think about what veterans had done and what they gave up. And so now I appreciate that more.
Okay, so you're more appreciative now than you ever were?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how did your military service experiences affect your life?
Well, every time I have to do something hard, every time. Say I have to, anything, I can't even think, but something difficult physically, I always go back to how hard it was to carry that sea bag, all those miles from one end of base to the other, marching, everything you have is in that sea bag, and I had to carry it on my back with all those women, and then up 3 floors of stairs, and then back down, and then up again. And so I always go back to that in my mind, like, I can do this because I did that. And I use that a lot. I always go back to that. If I did that, I can do this.
So what are some life lessons that you learned from your military service?
Patience, be patient. Stupid, but good things come to those who wait. I have a great work ethic. I learned that there. Most of it, some of it I already had, but just to be more appreciative of what people are giving of themselves, and to be, I don't know, I can't even explain it, but just be more loving to people around you. They all have a thing. They all have a thing going on. Everybody's got a thing going on.
So how has your military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
Well, I think the military is clearly you have to have a military, and I think it's a good outlet for people, young people especially, who have no direction, don't know what they want to do. It teaches young people a lot of things, like I've said before, work ethic, and all about being to work at time, working as a group, having somebody's life depend on you, and all those things are good things for young people to learn, especially those who have no other option, or who feel as if they have no other option. So I would never bash the military. I think it's a great thing. War? Oh, nobody likes war.
So would you be welcoming of the idea if one of your children were to join the military?
I would be.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will hear this interview?
Be kind to others. In all capacity. As kind as you can. No matter what you're doing.
So is there any advice that you would give to young women considering joining the service?
I would hope that since I've been in, that things are better for women in the service. But as with anything that women want to do, I say just go for it. You're just don't even think anything about you're a woman and so you're any different from anybody else joining. Just do it. You can do it.
Are there any progressions in the military system that you would like to see happen?
Well, I hope they're happening. Just the whole harassment thing, I can't even stress it enough. If that's still happening, that has to stop. I have to hope it's not. That was the early 80s to the middle 80s, and it was deplorable, and I hope it's stopping.
So did the harassment that you got discourage you at all?
No, it doesn't discourage me.
Did you see it discourage any other of your
I did.
women peers?
I saw a lot of women, break down, not make it, get out, try to get out, anything they could to get away from it, but I just look at it as a form of male ignorance, just
Right.
being stupid, and it has no reflection on me as a human.
So with the other women who tried to get out because of the harassment and things like that, did you try to help them at all or anything?
You have to remember, it's you against the world.
Right.
So if there's 1,200 men, there's 2 women. You know what I mean? What are
Right.
2 women going to do? And it doesn't even really matter that we were women. What are 2 people going to do against 2,000 people? It's very difficult. It was difficult. It was fine. We stayed together as much as we could. We did what we could for each other. But
So how many women were you with? Or was it too much to keep track of?
No, it wasn't too much to keep track of. In Gulfport, there were very few of us. I was one in my department of 600 men. And then there were others in other departments, but not in mine. So when we went back to the barracks at night, there might have been 12 of us on the whole base.
Oh, okay.
In my area. I'm sure there were other people that were corpsmen, women that were corpsmen, or women that were in office spaces, or women that worked at wherever that were somewhere else. But of the women I knew, the women that were doing the similar jobs to me, there was probably a dozen of us.
So thank you so much for your time and allowing me to document your history as a veteran. So I was just wondering, is there anything that you would like to add that we have not covered in this interview?
I just want to say that it was probably one of the best experiences of my life. I know that it sounds like I had a terrible time as a woman in service, but I really did have a great time. I mean, we had a lot of fun. I made a lot of friends, and I met my husband and had 3 kids, and we did a lot of fun things. I didn't get to travel as much as I would have wanted to, but my time in Cuba was so worth it. It was 3 great years, and I think anybody should do it. But yeah, that's probably it. I do want to say, at the time I was in it as well, women were not allowed to deploy. So it was a different time. I had to choose between, I only had specific duty stations I could go to in my capacity because the CBs were a deployable group. In other words, there was a group of, there were different groups of men, and they would go to Viegas, or they would go to Puerto Rico, or they would go to Japan, and then they would come back. They would go for 6 months and come back, and then go for another group would go. And women were not allowed to do that. So we were just allowed to be support. So we either had to be in the United States or in an overseas base somewhere. So that's why I didn't get to travel as much, because of my capacity.
So is there anything that you would change about your service? Like if you could go back and change anything?
If I could go back and change anything, I would have finished college first and gone as an officer. Or if I couldn't have done that, I would have stayed longer. I wouldn't have gotten out. I got out after 5 years. I would have stayed in for 20. If I could go back and stay in for 20, I would.
What's the reason behind that?
Just then I would have been retired at 42, and then I could have gotten another job and just always had that pension, that military pension, and the military, all the veterans benefits that come along with it. That's probably the most important thing I would change. I would have just stuck with it. But I have to add that that wasn't an option for us because we were married, and I had now a child, so I had to either sign my child over to a family member so I could go overseas or get out. So since we were both in, we felt like one of us had to get out.
So did he not get out of the service?
He stayed in.
He stayed in? Okay. So is there anything that you've always wanted to share about your service that you never have?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I haven't shared, but like I said, it was probably one of the best experiences of my life, outside of being mother. I saw a lot of stuff, and I learned a lot of things, and I came away with a great deal of confidence that I didn't have going in, and I think people know that about me, though, that I have confidence.
Oh, yeah. So what would you say the most valuable thing that you've learned is?
Through my experience?
Yes.
Probably the most valuable thing I've learned through the experience is just that everybody just wants to be treated like a human being. We all just want to be treated like human beings. We don't want to be treated like less than someone else because of any reason. So I try to do that with people. Treat everybody the same way as I would want to be treated, and respect people for what they've done through life. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's got something they've done or they may be proud of or be ashamed of, and we just have to accept it and move on.
So is there anything else that we should talk about that we haven't covered?
No.
No?
Just want to be sure that everybody knows it was a great experience. I would recommend it to anybody who doesn't know what they're doing. Like if you don't have a direction, don't know if you want to go to college or trade school or stay at home or whatever you want to do. It's an option for everybody. It's a good experience, and if you go in knowing you're going to succeed, you will.
So what do you wish more people knew about veterans?
Just that we did give up part of our lives to protect, whether it's war or peace, when we're there for you. We're not there for any other reason but to protect you and your country. We're at the ready all the time, and people should understand that we did give that up, and we gave it up for other people.
So, we kind of talked about the challenges you faced as being a woman in the service before, but would you say that you feel like any less of a veteran because of that? Do people, I mean, I guess I should say, do other people make you feel less of a veteran than?
Well, I would say that's probably my issue, feeling less than I should. I'm still just as much a veteran as anybody else. Sometimes I let it get to me, that the attitude that people have, but most of the time when people find out you're a veteran, they're like, wow, you know, what did you do? And, you know, they're very interested, and they want to know how it all came about and what you did and all that. So the only time it makes me feel less of a veteran was when, like, there's a question of whether or not I should do an interview. Or, you know, I can't even think of another reason, but that's just so on the top of my mind.
Right.
No, I guess I shouldn't feel like less of a veteran, but sometimes I do.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you have to remember, at the time that I served, I was less of a military member. I couldn't deploy. I couldn't go to combat. I had to give up. I felt as if I had to give up one or the other, my family or my service. And I just pray that it's not like that for people now, for women now, because that was a terrible choice to make.
Right. So with the harassment, did that ever make you feel unsafe?
Sure. Yeah.
How did you handle that?
I locked the doors. How did I handle it? I just, I guess I always put up that tough person guard. I did that a lot.
And you think that helped?
I think it helped, because men are kind of scared of tough women. They'll never admit it.
So to close, could you share a favorite story or memory, or even a couple if you want, from your time serving?
Sure. So I in Cuba, we worked alongside with the Jamaicans, who were a very hardworking bunch of people, and they would come over and live in the barracks next to us. And so I met this Jamaican guy named Gracie, and we worked together out of the rock crusher. And so every day I would go down for muster, and we'd make sure everybody was there, and then you get in your truck, and I always got to get in the truck with Gracie, and we would go out to work every day, and he drove me out there, and he was always very protective of me because he knew what I was going through, and he had left his wife and family at home. So he was very protective, and we became very good friends. But we worked on the rock crusher together, and he taught me how to crush rock, and he taught me how to make asphalt and how to just do everything out there. And that was probably one of my most fun periods of time out there. I think I worked at the rock crusher for 6 months maybe, crushing rock and making asphalt. And he always called me the best little rock crusher on the island.
So are you still in touch with Gracie?
No, I think Gracie unfortunately left Cuba. I don't know what happened to him. He was much older than I was, so.
Oh, okay.
But we were great friends. And another one was, so back then we used to, as insane as this sounds, all the garbage from the military and the civilians in our 45 square mile area on Guantanamo Bay was picked up and taken to a dump. And so they would dump the garbage, and then we would burn it. We would burn it daily. So that was another one of the rock crusher crew's job, was to push the dump, we called it. So somebody would get dropped off at the dump every day. I probably only did it for a couple weeks, but it was really fun, even though it just sounds terrible. So they'd set the dump on fire, and then you would take a bulldozer and shove all the garbage over the hill into the fire. And so it was fun, but it was so insane to think that we just burned garbage. I mean, aerosol cans, baby diapers, all the plastic, everything just went in. And can you imagine the smoke that was billowing, and I was breathing? Like, I didn't have on any respirator or anything. I was just pushing trash into the fire. Seems so crazy right now, because you'd never do that. It would be against everything.
Yeah, right.
But we did that. That's how we got rid of garbage. And that was fun.
Well, Well, thank you again, Rachel. It's been a pleasure doing this interview with you, and I'm happy that I got to document a part of your story.
Thanks.